Hello and welcome. I am Naya, and today I am excited to share with you a short story titled Salome, the Spirit of Autumn, written by Nicholas Leonard. Nicholas reached out to me asking if I would be interested in performing some of his work on my channel. After reading his stories, I gladly accepted. Nicholas Leonard is a writer from Massachusetts, specializing in general fiction with Gothic and Romantic elements. In addition to prose, Nicholas also writes poetry and has penned 154 sonnets. You can find his poems and sonnets on his Instagram page. You can easily access the link in the description below. As we delve into the story, prepare to be transported to a realm where the essence of the season is captured in vivid imagery and profound emotion. And now, Salome, the Spirit of Autumn, by Nicholas Leonard. I know who's behind the leaves changing color in autumn, for I was stacking firewood when she appeared. Although the day was cold, I had begun sweating because I was standing in the sun and carrying chunks of dry wood from a pile to a rack, brushing off dirt and pine needles off each piece of wood throughout its transit. I had been at it for about an hour, coming out after breakfast. I was a mess of smells. Dusty dirt, bug spray, a whole lot of bug spray, sweat, and the dry smell of wood. I had been interrupting the brown centipedes and wool spiders throughout my work. We kept out of each other's ways, but I was getting used to them. The smaller that the pile became, the more I knew where the spider and centipedes would be hiding. I had just picked up a piece of wood and put it back down to let the centipedes scurry off of it and back into the earth when she came. It was the sound of horse hoofs that alerted me, for there was nary a sound most mornings. I picked up. She was atop the most majestic looking of horses. It was black, with muscular shoulders but thin legs and a well-fed abdomen. Its eyes gleamed the way night's reflection in bodies of water does. There was no saddle, no reins on it, but she sat on the horse anyway. I squinted up at her because she was bringing her horse through the sunny day. Sunlight shined on her bare shoulders, and I could make out a band of freckles across the bridge of her nose. Little centipede footprints. She seemed humbly delighted to wear those freckles. Her hair was long and straight, and a brilliant amalgamation of red and orange. I held my hand up to my forehead to block out the sun. I saw her face more clearly, and her humble delight was more apparent. She wasn't wearing anything fancy for a woman riding a horse, just a black tank top and black pants, as if she wanted to match the horse. "Good morning," I said, a little out of breath from my work. "Good morning." She spoke in an accent I couldn't place. It wasn't from another country, but from another world, a kind of angel speaking English with her native language, trying to break loose. "What are you passing through here for?" I asked. "To ferry in autumn." "Uh-huh, it's coming," I agreed, to which her humble smile intensified. That was when I knew she was keeping a secret. "But you're getting ready for winter?" she said, gesturing to the debris of wood I was standing in. "Yes, ma'am." "I am Salome, the spirit of autumn." "The spirit of autumn," I repeated. The answer, yes, was locked behind her humble delight. Her face, hot with beauty, was cooling like a pie, for her face was shaded and mine was not. "Look, lady," I tried not to laugh. "What makes you the spirit of autumn?" "The leaves will become the colors they're meant to be while I ride through the forest." "Well, obviously, it's that time of year. They'll change color with or without you," I argued, trying to sound as polite as possible. I didn't mean to argue, I just wasn't sure why she was telling me this. Hmm. She flipped back her hair. "So, you don't believe me?" "No, I'm sorry, I do not." "You will when you see the leaves. They'll be the color of my hair." I blinked at her. I made sure to study her hair. It was indeed a strong auburn color. I gulped. "It's no longer time to work the way you did in the summer," she told me. The horse shuffled in place, adjusting its standing and making her undulate on its back, but she remained in control. I looked around and saw all the green leaves still on the trees. They shone a kind of emerald color in the sunlight. "Here," she said, reaching up to catch a green leaf that was slowly hovering down. She caught it, and I heard it crinkle in her hand. There was a prison break being planned in her humble smile. I knew it. She looked at me the whole time while I looked on, unsure, confused. She moved her hand until it was over my hand. She opened up her hand and an orange leaf fluttered down. I caught it. "How did you do that?" I stammered. But all she did was give me her humble smile. For some reason, I loved her freckles then. "Look at the leaf," she ordered. I did so. It was the same exact color of her hair. She didn't seem so proud, but she was delighted at my reaction. She decided to depart from me. My surprise was her departure gift. I watched the horse trot away, bouncing to and fro ever so sadly on the back of the horse. A couple of days later, New Hampshire was exploding with color. My world was auburn. I decided to go fishing by a lesser known pond in the woods. I was accompanied by birch trees that had gotten their hair dyed the same color that Salome's hair happened to be. The marigolds at their trunks seemed newly hatched fiery chicklings. The bumblebees danced around the marigold. I noticed some bumblebees had little yellow polyps on their legs, it being the nectar they were collecting. This was where she visited me again. "Do you believe me now?" Her voice came from behind. I turned around, still holding my fishing rod. She was still wearing black, but she was walking instead of riding her horse. "So, I said. I looked up at the red and orange canopies as a continuation of my answer. "Why do you come to me again?" "Because you are a part of autumn. Did you know that?" "I didn't." "You, boy, are a part of summer, winter, spring, and autumn. I tend to the leaves, but I have to tend to you too," she explained. Her humble smile was back. I was so close to her that I swear I lost my breath for a second. I could see the centipede footsteps across the bridge of her nose even clearer now. "What's my duty to the seasons?" I asked. I felt an immediate regret because I think I sounded dumb. This made her happy. She giggled. "Where's your horse?" I inquired, to which she answered, "I'm letting him run wild today down at the power lines." "And what is my duty again?" "Your duty is to believe me," she said. It made me gulp. She continued in the most wonderful, pleading, but confident tone I had ever heard. Your duty is to miss me when I'm gone. Your duty is to miss the color of the leaves when they fall and make all the trees gaunt and naked. Your duty is to miss me. You aren't thankful that I'm here today. Your duty as a man is to take me for granted, but miss me when I'm gone. Promise you'll miss me when I'm gone. I stood perplexed. I shuffled in place the way her horse had before. I looked at her, and I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to promise her anything at all because I knew that if I promised to miss her, then it would ruin me. It would spoil every other season except for autumn. Autumn. Salome was autumn itself. Her black tank top was the crows that waited for Halloween. Her hair was the leaves. Her freckles were the footsteps of the centipedes that were hiding in my piles of firewood. I believed her then. I am here, she asserted, but I won't be here forever. The combination of her telling me this and the beauty of her face and hair and freckles broke my heart. I did it out of instinct, pure instinct. I took one hand away from my fishing rod and brushed my thumb across the belt of freckles across the bridge of her nose. She stayed still, letting my thumb sweep across her face as if it was integral to autumn. I was curious. I wanted to touch her face, and I did, and her freckles didn't have any texture. They weren't like braille or paws, but smooth. I retracted my hand and looked at her in amazement. All she did was give me her humble smile. Such a calm smile it is, and simple and warm. Look, she laughed. Now your cheeks are red too. Indeed they were. I could feel my face filling with blood. Magma in my face that her laughter cooled. I laid my fishing rod down on the shore. So what if a fish bit the bait and carried the rod into the pond? I had autumn. Autumn existed. Salome existed. I touched her freckles, and she made my cheeks red. It was instinct when I touched her freckles, but what I did next was pure impulse. I shot forward and kissed her. The wind tossed the branches disapprovingly while our lips connected, and she let our lips connect because she took mine. It was a great excitement that slowly settled down like one long drawn out deep breath that makes you feel as if you'll never have to breathe again. The taste of her mouth reminded me of melted vanilla ice cream, and that stayed with me when our mouths disconnected and made my mouth so much like an empty bowl. Hers was the one that had the melted vanilla ice cream taste. I won't be here forever, she reminded me. I think she was trying to scold me, but she sounded too delighted. We spent the day observing nature. She let a little black beetle fly down and crawl up her arm. We watched it make the climb up her arm, where every tiny transparent hair stood up like an army raising their swords in respect for the beetle. It climbed to her shoulder, circled in place, and flew away. We giggled in its wake. We went for a walk in the woods after relaxing amongst the birches and marigolds. She held my hand in hers, which was warm and safe. She pointed out the dead irises along the way and pointed out the wild onions that were growing from the carcass of every iris plant. The limp palm leaves were a reminder of the time of year. My work with stacking firewood was done, and so was Salome's work. All the mountains and valleys and forests had turned into the red and orange color of her hair. But it wasn't time for her to leave yet. She bit into apples like it was the fanciest food in the world, meant for poor people to eat, for there was mischief in her bite, a victorious mischief. We ate apples while wandering through wild pumpkin patches, which the forest floor was pregnant with. She told me to let my apple core drop, so a tree could grow from the seeds. Although we were close, there were restrictions in the air around us because she had told me, I won't be here forever. I wish this was forever. There was one point where we were treading knee deep through an ocean of leaves. They crinkled and rustled against our legs while we walked through it, the same way we would have walked through an ocean. Then, it was one day in November when we walked into an open area that had been deforested over a century ago to make way for the railroad tracks. But the railroad hadn't been in use for decades. Now, all there was were wild plants of wheat and ancient skeletons of trees. She was jogging and I was jogging after her. I thought we were playing a chasing game like we sometimes did in the woods. But she ran ahead and stopped. She looked over her shoulder, smiled, and a bout of dead leaves started being swept up into a whirlwind around her. I was too late when I realized that she was leaving me. My heart broke to see her hair being picked up in the whirlwind, flowing in and out of her face. But she always kept her smile. The wind currents intensified, and I had to squint my eyes and eventually hold my arm up to stop my eyes from being swept out from my skull, while the wind and leaves and Salome tugged my heart. My heart was beating against the cage of my ribs because it wanted to be included in that auburn tornado. The wind settled. The tornado diminished. The auburn leaves crinkled down. Salome was gone. I was out of breath when I fell to my knees on the old railroad tracks with my eyes still transfixed on where she once stood. I spent the first snowfall at the abandoned train station, miles away. I figured it would be a place where I could miss autumn in peace. I sat on the front steps that led into the undercroft where people used to buy tickets. The steps were made of stone, and I rested the back of my head on the platform behind me, looked up, and watched the flakes of snow sprinkle down. I knew there was nothing I could do. I remembered her kiss and her freckles, and how she was right that the foliage matched her hair. This was all I had to do. For how could normal people and normal day-to-day things interest me when I had experienced autumn with her? I had experienced the art with the artist, and now I was being forced to confront a chillingly lifeless season of art. Yes, winter's beautiful in its own right, but autumn, Salome. No winter entity has the same auburn hair, same freckles, same homemade, humbled smile. I languished there and got snow in the hand that one caught the leaf Salome released down onto me. Well, I was getting a little bored of catching snow in my hand which Salome used to hold, so I got up and wandered into the shelter beyond the empty ticket booths. The train station had become a failed catacombs of heaps of dead and brown leaves against the walls. I'm sure the wind had swept those leaves into the undercroft before, and the leaves, sheltered from the sun, had a slower rate of decay. I didn't like that those dead leaves were dry and brown. Salome's hair would never be like that. They hadn't heard footsteps in such a long time that they didn't react at all. I came out of the undercroft and onto the platform where people used to stand and wait for the train. Brown veins of railroad were trying desperately to poke out from the snow, but it was useless. I looked down the tracks, or down the snow that smothered the tracks. The distance was obscured into a white winter fog. Knowing such a blurry horizon existed was enough to make my cheeks burn in the cold. I don't know what compelled me. I had nothing else to do, but I stepped off the platform and into the snow that covered the brown and rusted railroad tracks. My boots came down along the snow in muffled crunches. I couldn't have been walking for more than 2 minutes or so when it started raining red and orange leaves. My walking slowed and I looked up. The auburn leaves were coming down from a naked white sky, from a distance so high that I couldn't see the cause of their falling. I held my hands out and caught one of the red leaves. It wasn't dead and brown like the leaves in the undercroft, but it was vibrant and alive. It was a brilliant ruby color that any tree would be lucky to have. I held it in front of my face and smiled at it in a mix between victory and disbelief. But there were too many auburn leaves for me to catch. Was nature breaking its own rules for me? Autumn had a favorite mortal, me. I walked ahead into the shower of falling auburn leaves. A million love letters from autumn were falling down. I jumped in the snow, catching handfuls of leaves and laughing. And I tell you, my cheeks weren't rosy because of the cold that day, when the auburn leaves fell on that snowy day. My cheeks were blushing. Salome was the one who made my cheeks go red. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Stay tuned for Nicholas Leonard's short story, Apocalypse, coming up next.